At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Omar, Jessie, how are you doing?
Fantastic.
We're doing excellent. Thank you so much for having us, Dr. Doug.
Oh, it's great to have you on the podcast. And obviously, you have your own podcast.
Yes, we do. The ASQ podcast.
Yeah. I'm going to have to listen to that one. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think we talk about a lot of similar things.
We do. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what I'd love for you to do is I really would love for you to kind of share how you got to this point, because it's always so fascinating. I know you've had other careers and all of that type of stuff. And what happened in your life to bring you to the point where you're doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely. You want to take that on first?
I know. I think you should take it on first.
Okay.
This is sort of his baby. So,
about 4 years ago, after a career in youth development and management, middle management, I kind of like hit a point in which the organization that I was with, our values no longer aligned. You know, that we're going through a change in which I felt that the heart of the organization was going away, and it was being changed by this methodical way of thinking and this way of not really living from within. It was more process and outcomes and things of that nature, which, although those things are important, they were taken away from the real job and the mission of what we were doing, in my opinion. And it was a it was a tough breakup. It's one of those soul crushing things, because you dedicate your early stage in life to find that thing, that career that is going to define your life. And when that dissolution comes, it takes you for a whirlwind, because your identity, it's no longer tied to what you are doing. So for me, it was soul shaking. Yeah, it was devastating. And that led to a soul's quest. And a soul's quest, the premise behind it it goes right into what you talked about. It's a combination of ideas from psychology, philosophy, heavily influenced by mythology, in particularly the hero's journey, because we come to a point in which we're departing from what we're accustomed to do, going into something that is new. And that is super scary, very threatening, because it goes at the foundation of identity. And when you lose that, or when you perceive that you lose that identity, two things happen. One, you either withdraw into depression or darkness because it is so much easier to identify with the pain, or two, you go out there in the world and go into a quest to redefine who you are and find out what you're going to do in the here and now. So that was the foundation of why we started with the Soul's Quest. That idea that life doesn't stop. Life is a series of transitions, a series of crises that we face when we're not aware that everything in the universe is a cycle, a beginning, and end. So that, in a nutshell, is what the catalyst to creating a Soul's Quest.
Well, and Jessie, how do you fit into this whole thing?
Actually, my story is a little bit funnier than his. I don't want to take away from his experience, because it was a lot for him at that time. But for me, it was, I like to tell people that I was very much living in the matrix. I was normal for all intents and purposes. I was empty nester at this point. You know, kids are grown now. I was working in higher education at that time. I was probably there about 11 or 12 years. You know, I saw myself in like a capacity as an instructor, a faculty member. You know, I just had my whole life planned out for me. I'm going to retire when I'm, 62 or whatever the age is, and just going to enjoy retirement. I'm doing great. I worked hard on my education. I earned a terminal degree. When I became a doctor, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a doctor. And unfortunately, it wasn't the same experience that people think that they're going to have. You go through being a really good employee, being loyal, dedicated, doing everything right for family, meeting all the expectations, being a good wife, a good, mother, all these things. So I was very much living that role. And I started to see little glimpses of like doors closing on me. And so even after achieving these high achievements, right? You're getting a doctorate, you're working in higher education, you're feeling like you're successful. Your kids are doing fantastic, I felt a little bit of an emptiness, not empty nest, emptiness.
Emptiness, yeah.
Yeah, an emptiness. So what happened for me is Omar was going through his thing, like we're doing this thing at the same time, and out of nowhere he's like, I'm going to start a podcast and you're going to be the host. And I was like, wait, what? Time out. No, I don't like to be on camera. I don't want to be on a camera. I don't want to do this. At first I thought it was just going to be audio. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, no, it's video too. And I'm like, oh God. And so we started this whole thing and I still wasn't 100% in. I had one foot in, one foot out because I was, for all intents and purposes, fine. And so literally just recently, I had a lot of negative experiences with toxic work environments and a lot of toxicity from, people that I worked with or for. And it was really starting, these little holes were starting to get bigger and bigger. And it was literally like coming out of the Matrix. The same way that Neo comes out of it is the same way that I felt. I felt vulnerable and I was just questioning everything in my life. And it was disheartening and it was sad and it was a very traumatic experience for me because you have to go it alone, and I had support, right? I had support from Omar because he had already gone through this process or was going through it, but that experience, you have to do it alone. That call to the adventure is a solo journey. It's very lonely. And so, that's basically what happened for me. I'm saying it very lightly, but basically I now understand what a soul's quest is about. And I am 100% committed to helping other people, guide other people through this experience because it is an experience. It's a beautiful experience,
Well, and what's interesting, and as you were talking about your story, it reminds me of my daughter's story. Only a little bit different. She was getting a degree in sociology, and she was doing so well that they were fast tracking her to her doctorate.
Nice.
And
Wow.
so she went through I think it was 3 years undergrad, then she was moving into the graduate, was getting her master's degree. And all of a sudden she called me up one day and she said, Dad, I'm not sure I want to go get my doctorate. And I'm going, well, why not, sweetie? Because, I went so many years to get my doctor's degree. And she said, because as I'm now observing, because you're really close to the people and they were good to her, she says, but I'm observing what they're going through and what they have to do on a daily basis. And that's not me. And, because of my past experiences and so forth, we've done all these personality profiling and behavioral analyses and so forth. And she's very much left brain, right brain. So she's very strong-willed, but she's very much right brain and loves to be with people and so forth. And she said, Dad, they have no time for anybody. They're so busy at a doctorate level trying to do this and trying to do that. And so ultimately, bless her heart, she made the decision to stop at her master's degree, and then went off and got a job that she's loving right now that has nothing to do with her degree, although it prepared her for it. But, it's interesting how people move forward in their lives and try to achieve certain things because in some respects, they're told that this is what is good for us to do.
Exactly.
And did you kind of feel that way as you were going towards your doctorate, that this was just
Absolutely
something that you needed to do in order to be achievable?
Yes, I feel like I'm so glad you asked that question. That's a great question because what happens with us is that we're so conditioned, and it's almost like we've received this to-do list, this checklist of things that you need to do in order to be an accomplished individual, right? In order to have arrived. And we all know that we never arrive, right? That in and of itself is a contradiction because you just don't arrive. You're always transitioning. You're always going through what I like to call a metamorphosis, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, yeah, I was like, I'm working in higher education. Clearly, I need to get a master's degree. And then when I got my master's degree, I was like, no, I'm not going to go out, I'm not going to do this. But then I was like, but I want to be like all these other people that have PhDs. And I'm passionate about leadership and toxic work environments. I could write my dissertation on this. This is great. And then I will have arrived and they'll see me and they'll give me a raise and a promotion and they're going to just love me and adore me. And I'm just going to be, everything's going to be perfect. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I came from, my dad actually taught at Northwestern University there in Chicago.
Oh, awesome.
Nice. Okay.
And he was a classical voice teacher. But anyway, I have four brothers. There's five boys in the family and one girl. She's the youngest. And it was interesting because my dad basically said to us all, you will get a higher degree. Yeah. And you're going to pay for yourselves because I'm not paying for it. which would happen. So, I've got a brother that got his master's degree at Harvard, and I've got two brothers that are attorneys, and one brother decided not to go to college. And my dad was so unhappy with that. And as I talk to my brother now, of course, my dad's passed away, but as I talk to my brother, he really received some very unfortunate comments from my dad during that time. Now, guess who's the one in the family that owns the jet? And I kind of just
yeah.
So it's interesting how we can be so programmed, as you shared, to achieve whatever this happens to be in our lives, rather than, as you talk about soul quest. I love that terminology. So as you started to go through that process, what were some of the challenges you faced? What were some of the steps you realized you had to take in order to, number one, overcome the fear of, I don't know what's going to happen next, and then transition, as you say, with that journey to reach a point where you're back on target, but now you're doing something that you really love to do and are making a difference?
Yeah. Well, before I get into that, I want to touch something on what you both talked about, that need to belong, right? And society is a structure that it's problematic, not because it's evil, but because it is something that needs to function, right? But what happens a lot of the time is that we live our lives as it is meant to maintain society rather than society working for us. You mentioned a lot of the personality tests. Those personality tests, when you do anything, Myers-Briggs, PI index, anything of those things, it will tell you that not everyone fits, as a doctor, as an engineer, as this. There's artists, I'm an INFP in the Myers-Briggs, so I got flowers all over the place, and I like being alone. So society looks for certain types of people to perform the functions of maintaining the society. The problem lies that that's only a certain percentage of the population. What about the rest? So in the education system, which I spend some time working on, you call them the bottom 25%. So we don't pay as much attention to them like your brother. Those were skills and sets that needed to be nurtured for young people to be able to find and create things that will enhance society rather than take it away from it. So we get too caught up in the idea, and I think politicians and our leaders need to expand their consciousness about the function of society, which is to serve us rather than for us to serve them or it. And that's kind of like the problem that most people arise. Not like if you could tell I'm the philosophical in the house, she's the practical woman, right? She's the one that's practical, right? So, but one of the things that happen when you really come to that point of confronting that dissolution of identity, right, which is what we call it, is that you have to face it. And one of the things that you really truly have to ask is, if I am not that, if I am not the functions that I play in society, if I am not the roles of a father, a brother, a sister, those things are all important over professional. They are very important. But when those things go away, when the family begins to go on their own way, when our parents begin to pass away, when a dissolution of that, then the question is an existential question. Who am I really? Right? It goes to that particular point that we have to go ahead and figure out what that looks like. And that is painful. It's not for the faint of heart. But I always use the analogy, if you look at any person that has made an impact, a very important consciousness expanding impact in our world, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, those people had to spend a lot of time in solitude, right? 40 days and 40 nights. They had to go within, right? To be able to identify with something more universal. That
Yes.
way, that universality of what that is helps you transcend those things. And that is the core of what most people don't want to look into, that abyss. Is like how Jung talks about, if you go, don't run away from your shadow, face it. Because once you face it, you start really seeing the light that actually comes from it. And that's the idea. But it's painful. I cried a lot. You question, it's like, am I a loser? What am I doing? Is this whatever? You save money and then you lose money because you're not sure exactly what you're going to do, and you're thinking and you're waiting. So and then you have society's noise in the back constantly. You're being irresponsible. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You should be producing. You should be busy all the time. You should be doing this and that. So you have all that noise constantly berating you, that waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning just because your brain won't stop, So all those things is what you're feeling. And the idea is to be able to walk with that pain a little bit and ask that question constantly. Outside of all this, who am I?
And it's interesting for both of you, it had to do with your professions. And, I think for a lot of people, they may not be able to identify with that. But the reality is that we all go through different experiences in our lives. And I remember a number of years ago, I went through some tough experiences. And ultimately, it took me getting into a process of meditation and understanding that and studying with the top meditation teacher. And all of a sudden realizing, you know what? This is what I need to do. This is what I really choose to do. And that process, as you say, can be very difficult. But I think for people to understand that, and I'd love for you to share, because I know you work with a lot of people, as you think about it, if it's just not work that's causing the stress, but it's life events, how do people, number one, finally come to realize that, hey, this is what I'm going through? And how do they get to the point where they actually will take the desire, the courage, and the awareness to start that transformational journey? What have been your experiences with that?
So I want to answer that really quick. From my perspective, yes, a lot of the things that I experienced, or what turned me to my quest, was a lot to do with professions and how I was treated and how I was overlooked and doors closing. But I also had a lot of ordinary life, experiences too. And one thing that stands out for me is, and Omar is he's my philosophical personal teacher here, is I was really feeling like, oh my God, I'm an empty nester and I love it. I'm good with not having kids at home. I'm glad that they're doing their own things and they're off. I have a granddaughter. She's amazing. She's beautiful. And, I keep in touch with him and we talk and whatnot, but I'm no longer serving the purpose or the role that I was. I'm not a mother I'm not needed the way that I was needed before.
Yeah.
Right. And that was hard for me and I didn't realize it was hard for me until I started realizing, oh my gosh, he's doing like all his own things. He's going on vacations and he's having these little get-togethers and I'm not invited, or, they're going out for dinners and I'm getting pictures. And I was really feeling like left out, and I was like, crying and upset, like he doesn't need me. What's going on? Is he upset with me? Like a lot of really crazy questions came up for me in terms of what my role was now, because I didn't serve in the same capacity anymore. And one of the things that Omar said to me that helped me and pushed me towards, and this is that awareness part that you mentioned, was that our children they don't come from us. They go through us. Right? So we birth them and we guide them and we give them the tools and the resources to become independent individuals, right? And then they go off and they formulate their own life. They create their own family or whatever that looks like. So for me, that was an awareness moment. And it wasn't easy to accept that, because you always want to be needed, right?
Yeah.
But you also know that again, we're going through this hero's journey. It's a transition, and this has ended for me. I've done my role is complete when it comes to being a mother. I'm still a mom, but I'm just a mom in a different capacity. And that was really, really difficult for me. Yeah. Really difficult.
I'll bet. Go ahead.
I have the fortune of always working with people. And that's been one of the things that as a young person deciding a career, I kind of came across that. So I do a lot of work right now with males, and also with male survivors of sexual abuse and people that have unfortunately have survived that interaction. And in my interactions with men in particular, there is a dissolution of roles. They don't, it's a really challenging time right now for men to define what does it mean to be a man in a place in which brute force no longer is required, right? In which those things of taming nature no longer required, right? And so the despair and the loneliness that men feel because we are so conditioned not to express what's going on inside us, because it shows like it's a sign of weakness and something of that nature. So I the work that I do with men, I see that consistently, the questioning of, I'm feeling this, but if I say it, I'm going to be ridiculed.
Yeah.
If I open up about, man, I'm frustrated because I can't figure out how to interact with my kid. Man, I'm frustrated because I don't want to get divorced, but I have to go through a divorce. Man, I'm frustrated because at work, I have supervisors that are riding my back, even though I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And then also all these other things that men haven't been able to confront because our society hasn't allowed it. So my advice to them is always goes back to the first question. And every time I do a presentation and every time I do some kind of a talk, I always ask that question: who am I? Right? Because again, foundationally, we have to be able to be confident and comfortable exploring that question, to define it in our own terms. Because then from that point of view, once you discover what that looks like, it's like an epiphany. Oh, okay. Now you could write your actions. Now you could align your desires and the things that you want to base on that answer. So that is what I see when it comes to the people that I work with. We live in a society that is super technologically advanced, right? We produce food at a higher place than any other time in history. The places that we live are just the basic stuff, right? You could go into your shower to have a warm shower. Yet, with all those advances, why are we going to an epidemic of mental health? Why?
Yeah. And it's fascinating now how society has brought us to that point, and we see such anger that this is existing now, and and it's such a shame. And what I want to find out from you guys is, I was reading a little bit about you use a blend of psycho-spiritual insight, which I'd love for you to define,
Mhm.
practical tools, and grounded conversation as you work with people to help them. And I'd love for the audience to kind of understand a little bit more in depth what you do, how you use those processes, and how it's effective for people.
Yeah. So the term psychospiritual is a combination of obviously some psychology and spirituality. So psychology, I love the archetypes framework that Jung developed, right? Because he shows different aspects of what it means to be us, right? There is a dual nature within us, and we always we're a paradox of conflicting impulses, conflicting thoughts, conflicting desires, right? So this psychology, particularly in Jung's framework, is to be able to understand those conflicting forces and be able to find the balance between the two. This is what meditation is good for, to be able to see those extremes. But this is all psychology. The archetypes of the collective unconscious, they actually symbolize energies within us, right? When you look at Eric Erickson and the cycles of life, right? Most of us don't understand that there are different natural stages of life that we go through, from childhood to adolescence, from adolescence to young adult, from young adult to maturity to departure. And if we don't understand the psychology, the emotions that comes in those transitions, then what he defines as a crisis takes place. Right? The more we understand, the more conscious that we are about that crisis, the easier we can navigate through it. Right? The confusion is kind of like dissipated because we understand. So that's the psychology part. Spirituality, it's a challenge to understand spirituality from a non-pop culture point of view. We say a lot of things about spirituality, which is not feeling desires, avoiding, I don't want to feel, I want to be spiritual. I want to see these angels. I want to see all this different stuff. Personally speaking, and the way that we talk about it, spirituality is a practical thing. It's something that happens in the here and now, because our lives, for our average of 72, 75 years, happens in the here and now, right? And the way that I look at spirituality is, I'll give you the analogy of the sun and us. We do not exist without the sun, right? We are an aspect of the sun, of that energy, right? So it's an aspect of that. We have to understand our divinity when it comes to that, but also more importantly, how do we contribute in the here, in the now? Because everything in the universe contributes in one way or the other. We just have to find our point of expression by understanding all the dualities within us, find our point of expression so that we could actually contribute in the here and now. And that's when you get into that flow state that, wow, this is awesome. I'm enjoying this. And it could be anything. I can't tell you what it is because it has to be yours. I know what mine is. And what we do is that we guide people through that process.
And help them to understand.
Yes.
As you mentioned Buddha, as you mentioned Jesus, as you were mentioning those, what I found is there's one common theme that comes from all of them, and that is to become. I am that I am. And, with Buddha, become, free yourself from the suffering, just become. And it's fascinating to me that somewhere along the line we've forgotten that that's what it's really all about, is to really, as you say, find out who you really are, become. And it isn't something that you just suddenly say, oh, this is who I am. It's a process of, number one, I think, overcoming all of those imprints that have focused our lives, and then being able to move in a direction where we truly become, and as you say, find that sense of peace and joy. So there's this psycho-spiritual. Now, what are the practical tools that you use?
So that was the next step. That's where I come in. I think for us, really, when A Soul's Quest was born, and as it's evolved, because it's definitely become, it's evolved tremendously, is what we do is we offer our own lives and a look into what we're going through as a platform, a safe platform for people to be open, express themselves. I like to say that we offer a frequency to people to let them in to our space, right? So we call those people soul questers, because those are the people that want to know, who are committed to going through this, through the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
And so we offer a variety of tools. We offer guiding. We don't call it coaching. We call it guiding, because we guide people through this process. I walk with people because I'm just recently going through this transition, right? So it's really raw for me, and it's really it's been an eye-opening experience. And I think when you allow people to come into your space and you go with them and you feel with them and you become, and you have that empathy because you're experiencing it, or you have experienced it, there's a different type of relationship that happens there, a bond that happens, And so we guide.
And from a practical standpoint, what is it that we do, right? There's a concept that I found, actually, a Greek concept called psychopomp, right? And is a guide. It used to be a guide from life to death. And so our role is really to be able to walk along with people and let them know what the post signs are, to help them understand the process of walking. We do that by courses that we have on our membership, which are really targeted at understanding the different forces that you have inside. Like, for instance, we define the soul because the soul has a definition, and we use the Greek definition of it. So the first one is your impulses, your natural impulses, the urge for reproduction. That's something that we have to understand, because it's very problematic when we don't, right? The urge to power, which is something else that we have inside of us. The urge, like we talked about society, the urge to belong to something. Those are things that we need to understand, because we really don't talk about that. So some of the things that we practically do is that we explore those aspects, right? The second part is our emotions, right? So Jessie, in her doctorate, did a lot of work with emotional intelligence. In my work as well, I did a lot of work with emotional intelligence. And again, the emotions are the compass that kind of like tell you what the urges are doing, right? So you have to understand the urges, and then when the emotions arrive, you'll be able to not eliminate them, but to be able to find the equilibrium between the two opposing forces. So you have to understand that, right? And the final thing is understanding your thoughts and your mind, right? So in order for you to transform the way that you see the world, you have to use your mind. Our mind is the most powerful tool that we possess. We are the only creatures on earth that has an expanded level of consciousness and an expanded level of thinking, right? So we use philosophy, right, as a spectrum. And you have to define what your philosophy, what we call your approach to life, that is. And it all starts by first understanding that the mammalian brain, which is called, right, those impulses and the stuff, your emotions, and then how do you use the power of your mind to focus and pay attention to what it is that you would like to see. So the process goes through all that, because again, I've always been a lifelong seeker. I love learning new things, but very seldom do I see people talking about these things. When we talk about our impulse, the libido, the serpent power as Kundalini power, as something that is like, ugh, we don't want to talk about that. I'm too spiritual for that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that in every single religion, in every single mythology, that's an important power to understand, because it is the power of creation and the power of destruction. And if we don't know how to balance that, right, that's where problems begin to happen in our life. And I had to learn all this. I had to understand that first. I had to be able to see, like, oh, my impulses that made me make bad decisions, that idea to belong. I made bad decisions when it came to money because I wanted to feel like I belong, right? Well, so all these things are important to understand.
And it's interesting as you talk about impulses and the emotions and the emotional intelligence, and I love the emotional scales that I've seen and studied. And what's fascinating about it is that, there will be times that all of a sudden I'm getting really frustrated here in Thailand. Number one, because I don't speak the language and they don't speak English. And the miscommunication can be really frustrating. But then I have to sit back and go, okay, why? What is that root, as you call it, urge, or I say, what is that imprint within me that is causing me to experience this emotion? And I find that if someone will just observe their emotions, they can suddenly realize, okay, you know what? I don't need to have this emotion, but why am I experiencing it? And being able to do that deep dive into that and figuring out, all right, this is why it's happening, or that's why it's happening. And you call urges. But what's fascinating? Sometimes we have no idea where they come from. They come from childhood, which is subconscious. They come from DNA. They come from heredity. They come from epigenetics. They come from all of those things. And in many cases, we have no control over that essentially. But then we do have the control, because once we realize it and can recognize it and become aware of it, then we can start to take control. And I love how we can move from being a victim of all of that to being empowered by all of that. Now, you use a framework called PEP. Could you explain to me what that is?
Sure. So, so we still, and this is in our book, SOS Quest, a Transformational Approach to Life. And this is the foundation of a lot of things that we do. So PEP stands for perspective, experience, and philosophy, right? So it's one of the things that we urge people to do is to broaden their perspective, widen your gaze, right? Look at the universe. I love Carl Sagan. I love our honeymoon. We went to Kennedy Space Center, so that goes to show you like exactly how we look at into the universe, because it is important to look at the universe, at nature, to understand its energies and understand its how it works, right? The universe is impartial. Right, you have asteroids colliding in space, and they go in different directions. Right, you have stars that dissipate but then come back together, and you have galaxies that come together. So when you start looking at widening your gaze and getting that broadened perspective, almost like as above, so below, you start really truly understanding the cyclical nature of life. You start understanding that nothing is evil for us. It's for us to be more aware of it, which is what science does, right? Science is not a religion like they're trying to make it. Science is a process, right? To be able to look outside, to be able to recognize and deduce, and then be able to formulate an approach based on that observation, right? So that's what perspective means. Experience is, we experience life in many different things, in many different ways. We just talked about it as how we respond to the stimulus from the outside, right? So our experiences, the things that happen to us, we have to take all that information from a different perspective, cosmic perspective, so that we could distill exactly not why this happened, but what is it that I'm learning from this?
Yes.
Because the why question, when you think, oh, why did this happen to me? It's a never-ending question, and it puts you down in the pit. And I learned that when I was going through all this stuff. When you ask, what am I learning for this? What can I gain from this? What new perspective can I get? How can I learn and take something from this? So the experience has been able to look at life, at the situations that have happened, how I looked at within my impulses, to be able to formulate, gain the lesson, extract the lessons from it, the experiences, right? And then you go into philosophy. And philosophy is creating your own approach to life, right? I use, in a lot of the trainings that I use Nietzsche's Metamorphosis of the Spirit. Is in the prologue to those books that are too strong. He talks about the camel, the lion, the dragon, and the child, right? And the idea that when we're conditioned, we're a camel. A camel is a beast of burden. Put a load on me. This is what happens because we're just pitched into existence, right? You don't choose your family. You don't choose where you were born. You don't choose your body. The universe just pitches you, right? So everything is given to you, social conditioning, this idea. But then you because there's something inside of you that tells you you have to go and confront this. And if you don't listen to that, you're not going to be okay. So you go into the desert, you get transformed into a lion, and the goal of that lion is to kill the dragon. You need to kill the dragon. There's a thou shalt, or you should do this, you should do that, you should be like this. You have to kill that dragon. And once you do that, then you get transformed into a child. Right? It's like in the Bible says, and a child shall lead them, right? We have to get to a point as a child in which we are curious again. We are open to the possibilities of the universe. We are open to the possibilities of life. And only from that point can you really begin your quest, right? So the objective of PEP is to get you to that launching point, right? In which you are understanding your experiences, understanding that everything that happened led you to this point, so that now you could go out there, find more about what you are, and then live from that point of view. So those are the things that's what that means.
Okay, and I love that. You know, as you talk, I think about this concept that I just learned from one of my other podcasts, that, you know, our experiences are there to teach us. You know, we can either become a victim of our experiences, or we can allow that to teach us. And as we allow that to teach us, and as you say, as you get back to that final P and realize that, okay, I can actually use these and develop a gift and to develop an ability to help. And it's just like what you guys went through with your story. I mean, here you are now, and you've done all of the studying, you've done all of this stuff, and you've used that event or those events to develop a gift that then you give to other people. And that perspective, I think, is so important for people to understand.
You know, and what that leads to is, again, I'm the philosophy, I'm the nerd in the family. It's in Hinduism, there's the web of Indra, the web of gem, right? That idea that in every intersection of a web, of a net, there's a gem, and that gem is us. So we reflect who we are from that gem, and that reflection affects everything around us, right? So we're not advocating you're going to go ahead and change the world. Is when you begin to live from you, it automatically radiates and everything around you gets affected by it, right? And the idea is that it doesn't matter what you do, right? Again, our point of expression is a soul's quest, right? It could be you making the best sandwich that ever existed, you know, or you have to find that for you. I can't prescribe you go into real estate and do this and do that. It's like, the beauty of life is in the diversity of life, right? You go in nature and you see all the beautiful colors and everything else that's out there. You have that as well, right? And we have to help people get to that. And again, unfortunately, in my experience with the education system going through it and working in it, that's not what we do. We actually are taking away the beauty of what it means to be a human being. And we are creating functions, things that this is who you are. And we have to shift that, you know, we have to shift that.
So true. So true. And, you know, the thought that comes to my mind and the question that comes to my mind with your book, A Soul's Quest, okay? When people read that book, what are they going to gain? What's it going to do for them?
Essentially what we've talked about today, what we do is what we've done is we've taken all of the thoughts that we've talked about today, all of the processes, the experiences, the shadow work, the integration, the hero's journey is in those pages. And we invite the reader into taking this quest, taking this journey. It's a transformational approach to life. We're trying to get people to understand. We're bringing them into our world, into our experiences, so that they can now take a journey of their own, a quest of their own.
Okay.
And it goes back to also to being aware, right?
Yeah.
It's being aware. I mean, if I had to boil it down to one thing, it's like, you know, the more you know, the more you're able to understand things and life. The better you could discover where you fit in, independently, like Wayne Dyer said, independently of the good opinion of other people.
Yeah. So how do people find your book?
Well, we are going to be launching our book I think we're doing it in
No, our book is out already.
our book.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's out already. And they could go to asqempowerment.com. You'll be able to see the booking there. You'll be able to connect with us. We do what do you call it? Some lessons that we put out on a regular basis. But if you want to take a look at the book, just go to our website, asqempowerment.com, and just stay connected with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so say that a little slower, please, your website.
Yeah.
It's asqempowerment.com.
Okay, because I have a Soul Quest, a soulsquest.com.
Yeah. Well, we're
I couldn't
integrating.
access. I couldn't
Yeah, it's
access.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it's asqempowerment.com. Sorry for that. Yeah.
Oh.
And our book will be available at this point. Yes. And you can find it on our website and with all the other materials and curriculum. People can be members and receive our newsletters, interact with us.
That's great. And that was going to be my next question. So going to that website, they can find you, they can find your book. That's wonderful. And so kind of as we close, what would be a final message that you want to share with the audience?
The final message would be listen to that voice inside. There's a voice that tells you when you're on the path, and there's a voice that tells you that you're on the path. It tells you by the way you feel, your emotions, and all that. Listen to that voice. Follow that voice. And explore, more importantly, the question as to, who am I? Explore that question. See what answers you come up. And I challenge you to go beyond the normal responses. Go beyond your roles, go beyond your functions, and find a deeper meaning of who you truly are.
I love it. Well, guys, thanks so much. This has been a great conversation. I love it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
It's been a
thank you
great
for having me.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate it. And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to having you join us again soon. And this is Dr. Doug saying, namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.